Okay. Good evening, team. Wow. Look at that. I think we have people logged in from virtually every corner of Africa and from other countries dotted around the world. That is so exciting to see. A very good evening and a very warm welcome to you all. John, can you turn your video on for me? That would be fantastic. Thank you very much.
There you go.
There he is, Mr. John Miller. Fantastic. Now, I have had the privilege of meeting our guest speaker, Mr. John Miller, a number of times in various parts of the world over the years. And I've got to tell you that every time we talk, I am completely blown away, not only by his incredible passion and knowledge, but by his fierce and uncompromising integrity. And John is our director of the NeoLife Scientific Advisory Board. And get this, John has been a part of NeoLife for 52 years. And he plays an immense role in ensuring that we are not just another nutrition company. John and the Scientific Advisory Board team ensure that our science, that our innovation, and that our quality remain ahead of the pack. And that's what differentiates us from a very fast moving and often very competitive nutrition space. John is a member of the Senior Scientific Advisory Council within the Council for Responsible Nutrition in Washington, D.C. He is also a member of the New York Academy of Sciences, the American College of Nutrition, the American Botanical Council, and the American Society for Nutrition. And John, so John is an absolute authority on the subject of nutrition and supplementation. And tonight's session and having John as our guest speaker is something that has been playing out, and I've been working through my mind for some time now, and it's come together, which excites me beyond words. And John is calling in from beautiful California. I know it's bright and early your side. John, is probably 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm guessing. So good morning to you. It's great to have you with us. Right now you're talking to, man, this number is climbing, but it's soon to be approaching 700 excited NeoLife distributors from around Africa. Welcome to you, John. Good evening.
And well, thank you, and good evening, Drew. It is morning here. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, and so it's not too bad. I've been up for a while. I'm usually an early riser. I like to get up and get going every day, so this is well into my normal day. It is a beautiful day here in sunny Northern California. You know, the plants are all in bloom, and the sun is out, and the sky is blue. Yeah. So it's pretty idyllic at the moment. And it's really a pleasure for me to be here. You know, I always appreciate the opportunity to share the amazing things that separate this company from all of the rest of these things in the marketplace. You know, it's become quite crowded and quite controversial and quite subject to sort of the message of the moment rather than the knowledge that you can use throughout your life to sort of promote health. So it's really a wonderful opportunity for me to share that. So I thank you, and I'd like to thank everybody else that's joining us as well. So fantastic. We should have fun. This should be fun.
Well, take it away, John. Thank you.
Okay, so let me see here. Oh, there we go. I want to first start again by telling everybody how much I appreciate you being here. I'm going to try to share my screen here, if it will let me. A moment ago it wouldn't let me, but let's see if it will now. Yes, it looks like it's probably going to share my screen. And then I want to go to there. And there we go. Okay. So anyway, like I said, it's wonderful to have this opportunity, and I appreciate you all sort of investing your time and listening to me. Today, you know, time is a very important thing. Unlike money, you know, you can spend money and make more, but once you've spent time, it's gone forever. So I really appreciate this. We live in challenging times. I'm sure you're all aware of it. Everybody in the world knows that the recent challenges that are represented by COVID-19, the virus that's still sweeping the world to a great degree, was something that made everybody stop, either purposefully because they were told to by their government authorities, or simply because they stopped and were so surprised by what came along and the big impact it had. So in the wake of that challenge, in this explosion of concern that we've had about our health, I think it's created an opportunity for us. And that opportunity is there are now billions of people out there that all of a sudden want to know everything that they can learn about maximizing their potential for health and minimizing their risk of disease. People who were, maybe too busy or didn't care or wanted to care but didn't have the time or whatever it was, all of a sudden now are really interested. We've seen that in all of the sort of social media databases that we monitor, that the interest has popped up. So for you out there, whether you're talking about, trying to get somebody to be involved in the business side of the deal, which I'll leave to Drew and others, but in the product side of the deal, actually using these products to promote maximize the health potential for them and their family, it's a rich opportunity for you. But I think that the challenge is it's a very, I won't call it a competitive marketplace because we have few competitors, but it's a very noisy marketplace in that there are a lot of people out there and products out there making big, bold claims that, maybe didn't exist 3 months ago or even, 3 years ago. So when I talk to people about our company and about, sort of why NeoLife, why would I want to be involved in NeoLife? There's a few things that I do to sort of help people see the difference, if you will. And I think that's a really important thing to do. And I think we have to start by asking them the question, find out from them what's important to them. If they're going to make a decision, because really you should embrace the idea of nutrition to maximize health potential, not for today or next month or next year, or, well, COVID-19 is around, but it should be something that you embrace for your entire life. It should be one of the most serious decisions that you make. So in order to help them make that decision and understand the NeoLife difference, you have to sort of ask them what's important to you. So some things I ask them, I say, is it important to you that the company that you're going to rely on for, knowledge and products and information to help you pursue and attain maximum health potential, that company have a long history of innovation and excellence? Because, or could it just be somebody that popped up yesterday? Because having that long history, that sort of presence in not only the marketplace, but in the scientific community over time is an important factor. Would it be important to you that the company that you're going to choose have a powerful philosophical foundation? Meaning that the driving forces that move the company, are they in line with what your cares are? For example, would it be important to you that they have a respect for nature? We always have an undying respect for nature here at NeoLife. So would that be important? Another one, would it be important to you that this company has shown a commitment to science, not just today or in this moment, but for a long period of time? Would that be important to you? Would it be important to you that the company, rather than just selling the same old thing over and over with a fancy label, actually have products based on unique and exclusive ingredients and technologies that other companies just can't deliver? Would it be important to you that that company exhibit a relentless commitment to quality? A matter of fact, a level of quality that is unmatched around the world. And would it be important to you that there be actual compelling scientific proof that these products actually work? When you talk to people, if these things are important to them, and I got to think that any serious person who is seriously considering, embracing a health pursuit program for the rest of their lives, for them or their family, these things and many more have got to be important considerations. So it's just a process I use to sort of bring them into the conversation. You don't need to ask all 6 of these or 5 of these questions, or however many there are there. But the idea is, to get to know them, to build a relationship, ask them what's important. Because if these sorts of things are important to them, then NeoLife is the right choice for them. We have been around a long time, 62 years now. We have a heritage of excellence, not only in the products we do and the science we do, but in the way we conduct ourselves in the marketplace and our relationships with our distributors and their customers, spanning 62 years. For 62 years, we have expressed product leadership and scientific leadership that's unmatched. We have unique products, incredible technical innovations, world-class clinical research trials, partnerships with some of the top scientists and research institutions around the world. We've been published in leading peer-reviewed scientific journals, and we have a tremendous amount of proof that what we say about our products is actually what you can expect those products to provide you. So by taking them sort of through our history, you can get a little closer look. So I'm going to just take you through that sort of very illustrious history of NeoLife right now, so to drive some of those points home for you and maybe give you some things that you can share with people. Let's start at the beginning. So always a great place to start. NeoLife was founded in 1958. Now, in 1958, besides being a long time ago, was a long time ago technologically and scientifically. We didn't have a great understanding about the relationship between nutrients and health. We had some. It wasn't that we knew that, for example, that vitamin C could prevent scurvy and things like that, but we really didn't have a deep knowledge. But there was a lot of intuitive knowledge out there. There was a lot of observational knowledge that said that nutrition plays an incredible role in your health and energy day to day. And out of that sort of intuitive database and the work that was going on in hospitals around the US and around the world, the idea of actually focusing on nutrition as a component to maximize health potential emerged. And in that emergence, NeoLife sort of took center stage, because NeoLife, unlike many other companies, was the first to embrace the idea that whole food nutrition was the key, and that the presence of whole food nutrients determines how well your body works and serves you, and the absence of certain nutrients therefore can be pointed to how it fails to serve you, or how well or how unwell it doesn't work. But the other thing that particularly made NeoLife stand out was the idea that all of this happens at the cellular level. It's not just what you put in your mouth and chew and swallow and what gets into your stomach, but it's actually what goes through that process and arrives all the way out to every single cell of your body, because every single cell is a living organism unto itself, and each one of them therefore needs to be cared for. Even though it wasn't well known at that time, the company understood that in that model, cells have to do the same sort of things people do. They have to take in nutrients. They have to use that nutrient for some purpose, the production of energy or whatever it might be. And then they have to eliminate the waste. That's sort of the way biological systems all work. When we look back on that now, we think, oh, well, of course. But in 1958, that was revolutionary. I mean, it was an idea that, though widely embraced today, I mean, not widely embraced, accepted as fact today, was sort of not really accepted in the scientific community or in the consumer population initially. It was viewed with a great deal of skepticism, simply because there was a lack of knowledge at the time. But so NeoLife actually opened up this whole idea of whole food nutrition focused on giving your cells what they need to be their best, way back in 1958. And out of that work came an incredible product called Treonin. You all know the Treonin story, I'm sure. But Treonin is lipids and sterols from whole grains that are designed to actually support both the structure and function of cell membranes. The cell membrane is the element on the outside of the cell that functions as a barrier to keep things out that we don't want in and keep things in that we don't want out, but at the same time to actively transport in the things we need and eliminate waste. And how well that membrane functions is directly related to the content of specific nutrients in your diet, and specifically lipids and sterile. So I'm not going to go into that story right now because I'll be an hour just talking about that. But suffice to say that that basic understanding of the role of nutrition in cellular structure, the membranes, and function, how those cells work to do their job, is foundational to NeoLife and is now actually foundational to how the whole category of nutrition, the whole science of nutrition, is evaluated. So that was right out of the box in 1958. In that first decade, though, the first decade of the company's existence, it went on to pioneer some other amazing things as well. You know, protein instantizing. The company knew that protein was critically important and that protein quality of the diet had declined, that there were a lot of proteins in the marketplace. Some of them were incomplete, some of them were not very biologically available, and some just simply didn't do the job. And on top of that, many of our best protein sources were also high in fat and cholesterol. So at that period of time, we began to understand that high fat, high cholesterol, particularly saturated fat, can be an issue. So how to maintain your protein content, the high value protein in your diet, while cutting back on your saturated fat and cholesterol became a challenge. And out of that challenge, the company developed the idea of protein supplements. And that whole idea was based on a technology that the company developed. Originally, the raw materials to make protein supplements were not very tasty and not very bioavailable, didn't mix well, and not very stable, and actually not very complete. But the company developed a technology which we call protein instantizing that take very high quality proteins, mix them together in very specific ways and in very specific conditions, then turn these otherwise insoluble powders into very soluble, very smooth and creamy, and actually pretty good tasting beverages. They became the first of the protein drink mixes, and we were one of the pioneers of that whole category, which today is a giant category worldwide. Out of that instantizing process came the development of what we call the ProtoGuard process, because as we worked with proteins, we found that they were very delicate, and if you didn't take care of them properly, you could ruin them in the process of trying to make them into a protein supplement. So we developed a ProtoGuard process that's very technically sophisticated. It's about the time and the way in which you put these products together, the moisture content, the light sensitivity, all of those things that are, we know to be fundamental to preserving the protein, preserving the amino acid value of those proteins. Through that work, we were able to bring to market the first complete proteins, complete meaning that not only did they have all of the essential vitamins and minerals, but they had a total of 22 amino acids that are involved in human nutrition. The reason that they were there is because nature put them there, and we figured that with our respect for nature, it'd be good to follow nature's blueprint. And it was apparent to us that even back then that each of these amino acids had very specific roles. We were able to show those benefits by doing clinical trials like protein efficiency ratios, PERs. Those were clinical investigations of how efficiently proteins and amino acids in our products were used. And we had, at the time, amongst the highest protein efficiency scores that had been seen in the marketplace or in the scientific community. So really, really powerful. Those two things alone, most companies would be happy to be associated with. But at that same time, in that same first decade, we also introduced earth-friendly home and personal care products. You all know, anybody that's been around golden home care for a while knows that this has been a fundamental aspect of the company's philosophy since its inception, that caring for the planet and making sure that the products that we deliver sort of do the job with the minimum negative impact in the environment. To summarize it, whether it's the product itself or the ingredients it contains or the packaging or the shipping or the freight costs or what they call the carbon footprint, how much energy is needed to get the product from the point of inception to the point of use in your sink or garage or wherever it might be. All of those things have been sensitive to us. And though that, again, is something that is pretty well known today, that is something that the company was pioneering way back there in its first decade of existence. Okay. So let's take a look at decade two. In decade two, the scientific excellence of the company started to ramp up, again, from this respect for nature and based in nature, backed by science, we put those two together and started finding amazing things. Vitamin C had emerged as being an important dietary supplement. Most of it was just on the market as plain old ascorbic acid, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that idea, except that's not the way Mother Nature intended us to get vitamin C. When we did the research back in the late 60s, early 70s, we found that nowhere in nature does ascorbic acid or vitamin C exist by itself. It's always in the presence of other sort of phytonutrients that are associated with it. For example, in oranges or citrus plants, vitamin C is always present with things called citrus bioflavonoids. These are a family of bioactive substances that not only are present with vitamin C and facilitate its uptake and activity in the body, but actually work to promote the length of time in which that vitamin C remains active. It's a water-soluble nutrient, so it tends to move through your body very quickly, which is why you need it every day. But while it's there, that level of activity is extended in the presence of these citrus bioflavonoids. So the company was the first to bring that sort of idea to market, late 1960s, early 1970s. And that in turn developed into an exclusive, unique and exclusive NeoLife ingredient called Neoplex concentrate, which is not just those whole citrus compounds that I told you about, but standardized amounts of those whole citrus compounds, so that we know that every time you consume one of our vitamin C products, or even our protein drinks will have this in it, that you're getting an important amount of those, not only the vitamin C itself, but those vitamin C sustaining and promoting nutrients as well. At that same time, we introduced lipotropic adjunct, which is, people might wonder how we got to this sort of thing, and even that terminology. Well, lipotropic adjunct came from two avenues. It was a unique understanding of when you mobilize fat in your body, say you're losing weight, or you're consuming a high-fat diet, you end up with a lot of fat in your bloodstream. And fat in your bloodstream, because your bloodstream is mostly water, that fat is not soluble. If you get too much fat, that fat becomes sort of insoluble, if you will. Lipotropic factors are those things in your diet that get into your blood and help keep that fat in solution in your bloodstream. They help emulsify it, if you will, in the bloodstream, so that one, it's stable, but it can be mobilized for utilization. So it is a lipid mobilization and utilization technology, if you will, that goes on there, that promotes how your body mobilizes and utilizes lipids. But out of that work came our understanding of the relationship of the homocysteine cycle. Homocysteine is a complicated thing. Again, I could spend an hour explaining to you. It's really fun to understand when you get to that point. But it's a bit of information that probably, if you're going to a cardiologist or maybe even a family practitioner, that's something that they would normally check in the bloodstream these days. Homocysteine is a marker of oxidative stress in your bloodstream, and oxidative stress is a bad thing. You don't want that to be building up blood. So by looking at your homocysteine levels, you can look at oxidative stress. Then when you see that rise, you can look back to see what the problem is. What we discovered is that homocysteine can build up in your blood and create that oxidative stress due to the absence of certain nutrients, in particular B6, B12, and a couple of other things, so which all you find in lipotropic adjunct. So that product was an amazing addition to the product line. And even though we're 40, 50 years ago, it is really a compelling and important product yet today. Back in that same time, we began to harness the power of digestive enzyme technology. Enzymes are directly involved in hundreds of things in their body, but one of the primary things that they're involved in is digestion. And we found that when we deliver our protein supplements, for example, that it became much better utilized, had a higher utilization efficiency when we help the body do the process of digestion. So, and we were the first to bring complete digestive support to those sorts of products with protein, fat, and carbohydrate digesting enzymes delivered in several products where that would be appropriate. Again, that's sort of leading edge technology today still, yet we discovered these things sort of 50 years ago. Here's another one in decade 2, probably the biggest thing that happened to the company in decade 2, the arrival of Dr. Arthur First. I'm sure most of you don't, or most of you know Dr. First's story and his importance to NeoLife. If you don't know, I suggest that you contact your sponsor or somebody in your upline or whatever and have tell, because this was an incredible event from an incredible fellow. To keep it to sort of a manageable comments today, because I could go on for several hours talking about Dr. First. For those of you, I just want to reiterate, this was a world-renowned cancer researcher and toxicologist. He had been a cancer researcher for many years. He was involved in establishing the Stanford Medical School Cancer Chemotherapy Laboratory back in the 1950s, and he was a spokesperson for the American Cancer Society and just a preeminent researcher in the world studying cancer. At a point in his life, in the early 60s, however, he decided that he was didn't feel like he was making the progress he needed to make working on how to treat cancers, and decided to focus his attention on how to prevent cancers. And he immediately realized that diet was an important component in maximizing your body's ability to defend itself against carcinogenic compounds. He had seen that in his research investigating what caused cancer, so it was pretty easy for him to put together the idea that there are certain things that can block those things that cause cancer and prevent it. Lucky for us, at a meeting that was going on in the San Francisco Bay Area, he encountered the founder of NeoLife and started a relationship with them. And shortly after, he found that the NeoLife philosophy of whole food nutrition combined with science to maximize health potential, he embraced that so much that he decided to join the company. And it was a big step for us. He immediately started making impact, bringing technologies like mineral chelation and detoxifying things like in Betagard or ToxGuard at the time. But the single biggest thing that he did, I think, is to form the scientific advisory board, convince the company that the science challenge was so large that they needed to not only focus on science, but they needed to create an entity that would get together and pursue science. And that was the formation of the scientific advisory board. Near as I can tell, and I haven't seen anybody be able to refute me, that we were the very first company to do this, to not only recognize the importance of science and empower it by the formation of the scientific advisory board, but to turn over the responsibility for the company's product line to a group of scientists and sort of let them drive the boat. And that decision not only changed NeoLife, but it changed the whole marketplace, because essentially it wasn't long, maybe 10 or 20 years later, the rest of the industry decided, gosh, that's a good idea. Maybe we should try something like that too. By then we had a 20 or 30 year head start on them, so no one has ever caught up. And today the Scientific Advisory Board is actively out there pursuing just exactly those things that Dr. First brought, this commitment to scientific excellence, the commitment to focusing on the science and the data and not getting caught up in just the marketing slang of the moment. It's very easy to get caught up in the whiz-bang nutrient of the day or nutrient of the week or nutrient of the year, which the industry actually celebrates as sort of nutrient of the year thing, but that doesn't make any sense scientifically. If a nutrient is important to you today, really scientifically validated important to you today, it's going to be important tomorrow and next year as well. So, this sort of idea that the marketplace drives things, the marketplace only drives messaging about selling people something. It doesn't provide the knowledge that actually empowers people to pursue health and vitality throughout their life. And that's one of the things that Dr. First taught us, and it's something that the SAB practices yet today vigorously. Moving on, in the third decade of our existence, the company had major breakthroughs, things like the artificial stomach. You know, that's a compelling thing when you think about its purpose. When we started developing products, we had a few challenges that we had to address technologically, like, okay, we've made this tablet or capsule or powder. What actually happens to it when you consume it? What happens when it gets down into your stomach? Say, what does your stomach do with it? Because we knew that those reactions were going to be important to how well the product worked. So to do that, we began this idea of developing an artificial stomach, literally the biochemistry of a stomach, with the same acid medium and the same effects of the churning of the stomach, peristalsis and things like that. But we wanted to do it in a laboratory where we could control the conditions and measure the output, if you will, see what was happening. So we created this artificial stomach that actually mimics very closely the events and happenings that go on once you consume a tablet or a capsule or a powder. From understanding that, we were able to develop really high technology solutions to some challenges. For example, we developed threshold control technology, an ability to sustain how long products exist in the digestive tract, to control how they break down. Why would that be important? Well, consider vitamin C. If you want to give somebody a serious dose of vitamin C, and you know that it clears the body pretty quickly, even with flavonoids and bioflavonoids around, you would like to be able to measure or meter out how that vitamin C enters the bloodstream. So by having this artificial stomach, we were able to develop the technology to assure that the slow release of the vitamin C, or B vitamins for that matter, could be monitored. We could see them slowly being released into digestive media by putting it in the stomach, in the artificial stomach, and then monitoring its disintegration and dissolution in that environment. That led us to this idea of sustained release or threshold control technology. As that progressed, he took it even further by developing unique things like what we call targeted delivery technology. We know that there are certain things that must survive the acid environment of the stomach, then be delivered to the intestinal tract, to the small intestine in particular, in order for them to be functional. Okay, certain compounds in garlic, we know that. Most specifically, we know that probiotics like acidophilus would normally be lost in the stomach because the stomach's hydrochloric acid treats them just like every other protein it gets and tries to digest them. So very few of the active probiotics, acidophilus molecules, actually survive without some sort of treatment. So by that, we developed this technology called targeted delivery technology that allows us to develop products that actually go through the stomach intact, survive that highly acid environment of the stomach, and arrive in the small intestine where they immediately dissolve and disperse and create the high bioavailability that's needed there. Really critical discoveries, and we'll talk a little more about that as I go on. At that same time, that same decade, the company got involved in a study conducted at Texas A&M University on threonine grain concentrates, where we actually now had the ability to look at how threonine influenced cells and how those cells utilize nutrients, right? Remember, it comes back to the membrane and how well those nutrients are taken across the membrane, how they are utilized in the body, and how well the waste products or the products of metabolism in that cell are able to leave the cell or exported from the cell. In that trial at Texas A&M, they showed that, to make a long story short, they showed that when threonine grain concentrates were present in the diet, the nutrient utilization efficiency went up, meaning that, and because all nutrients are utilized in cells, that meaning that cellular nutrient utilization efficiency increased. A very compelling piece of scientific evidence that validated the the intuition and the earlier scientific understanding behind treonine and showed that it actually did have an effect on cell membrane structure and the function that membrane plays in importing nutrients, utilizing those nutrients and exporting either the waste or the products of that metabolism. Very, very unique thing to NeoLife. Moving on to decade 4, as the Scientific Advisory Board started revving up its capabilities and capacities, a lot of really important things happened. We began research into phytonutrients, in particular fat-soluble phytonutrients called carotenoids. And they were getting a lot of attention at the time because there was a great deal of scientific evidence that was showing that people who eat certain types of foods live longer and have a lower risk of disease. As we began to partition that data, we found that people who ate the most fruits and vegetables had the lowest risk of disease and tended to live longest. And when we took it to partition it a little further, it was people who ate fruits and vegetables of color tended to have the fewest diseases and live the longest. This is based on epidemiology that looked at hundreds of thousands, actually millions of people to derive this data. And then as we looked at the colors, we found that there were groups of colors, fat-soluble colors called carotenoids and water-soluble colors called flavonoids or polyphenols. And out of that work on the fat-soluble carotenoids, we developed carotenoid complex and began to do some clinical trials. We knew that these carotenoids that we had developed, in fact, as we were developing it, most people, there weren't even standards of identity for some of these carotenoids, so we were pioneering those developments with research institutions all over the world. And so we knew they were in our raw materials. They knew that they survived our manufacturing and extraction processes very well. We knew that they arrived in the gelatin capsule that we were going to use. We knew that that capsule broke down in our artificial stomach. And but we wanted to know is, do these things get into the bloodstream? So we did a human clinical trial, first of its kind, that looked at whole food carotenoids derived from carrots, tomatoes, spinach, red bell peppers, peaches, strawberries, and apricots, delivered in a gelatin capsule, could actually influence serum carotenoid values. That means the amount of carotenoids that were in your bloodstream. That was a compelling piece of research, so compelling that as we were working on it, members of the scientific community became aware, and we were invited to present our findings at a New York Academy of Sciences meeting called Carotenoids in Human Health. That's a long story, but in that meeting, it was really well received. There was a bunch of researchers from all over the world. One of those groups were researchers from the United States Department of Agriculture, people that we knew, but they came up to us afterwards and asked if we would be able to allow them to do some research with our product. After some conversations about their intent, we said sure, and then they went on to do a bunch of research on carotenoid complex, in addition to the research that the SAB had done. So the SAB proved bioavailability and utilization, how these carotenoids work once they're in your bloodstream, and then the USDA guys came back and confirmed that, and then showed that when carotenoid complexes in your diet, oxidation events taking place in your bloodstream were reduced. That's important because oxidation of blood lipids, in particular LDL cholesterol, is a precursor step to the formation of plaque and cardiovascular disease. They proved that it reduced oxidation events on cell membranes. Again, that's important because oxidation events on cells are one of the primary mechanisms that lead to cancer. And perhaps most importantly, and very timely of late, is that they improved that the presence or absence of carotenoid complex had a tremendous impact on your immune potential, and being able to show us a strong response in this clinical trial to a 37% positive swing in immune capacity in just 20 days. Again, another long story. All of that work was presented at scientific meetings all over the world and published in peer-reviewed journals. Now, why that's important, the peer-reviewed journal concept, is when something gets published in a peer-reviewed journal like this, the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, or the medical journal Free Radicals Biology and Medicine, or the Annals of the New York Academy of Sciences, it means that it's been accepted by fact. It's survived the challenge of some group of people, you generally highly skilled people, trying to prove that your data should not be printed because it has some fault, and it only gets printed once it's accepted that it is without fault. So really important sort of thing to understand about peer-reviewed nutrition. Moving on to decade 4, I talked about the fact that we've done this extraction into colorful fruits and vegetables. One of the things that we had learned as we continued to look at this, that there were 2 other elements of the fruit and vegetable nutritional community. Those were the water-soluble compounds. Water-soluble color compounds are flavonoids. They are part of a broader category called polyphenols. But flavonoids, and another one are cruciferous compounds. As we did our work, we were able to isolate, identify, and standardize these and deliver significant amounts, nutritionally significant amounts of flavonoids in our product flavonoid complex, and a nutritionally significant amount of these cruciferous compounds in our product Cruciferous Plus. Again, because of our involvement in the scientific community, excuse me, we were invited to participate in opportunities that other companies didn't get. And in this particular case, it was an opportunity to participate in a U.S. National Cancer Institute study using a human breast cell protocol. It's not ethical to study cancer, creations of cancers in living people, so you have to find cell mediums to do that. And to make a long story short, in that clinical trial that was handled by an independent research agency down in Birmingham, Alabama, they showed that the active components in flavonoid complex have a dose response ability to inhibit carcinogenic events from taking place in cell membranes, meaning that the higher the level of these active compounds in the cell medium, the greater protection was afforded to against a known carcinogenic substance. Similar things were shown for Cruciferous Plus, but more importantly, they showed that not only was Cruciferous Plus protective to cells, these breast cells, but they protected them by binding on cell site receptors on the outside of the cell, where bad estrogen would bind and actually push that cell towards breast cancer. So it functioned by blocking the ability of bad estrogen to bind to those sites. And in addition, it upregulated or increased the cell's natural capacity to protect itself. Inside your cell, you have a group of natural antioxidant enzyme structures. They're called phase 2 enzymes. They include big name things like superoxide dismutase and quinone reductase. But it's the cell's natural ability to protect itself. And they showed that Cruciferous Plus had the ability to increase the cell's natural ability to protect itself. During that same decade, we became the founding sponsor of a group called PhenReg. PhenReg stands for the Plant Polyphenol Human Research Interest Group. We knew back then from working with flavonoid complex and all of the researchers around the world, identifying these water-soluble, highly bioactive components and their role in human health, that this was going to become a tremendous area of scientific importance. So we got together with a group of these people in middle 1990s and became the founding sponsors of this PhenReg, the Plant Polyphenol Human Research Interest Group, which was at the time just a few of the world's leading researchers in this particular area of science, and now has grown into be one of the biggest and most important elements of research in the polyphenol arena. And we were the founding sponsor and continue to be a primary sponsor yet today. So it's given us a lot of insight into polyphenols, but it's also introduced us to a lot of really bright researchers. One of the things that we like to do through that organization is to recognize young investigators, people who are coming through either in their doctorate studies or in their postdoctorate studies, who are making the compelling discoveries in this area of polyphenols or flavonoids in human health. And we award several of those each year, usually 2 or 3, of those each year to researchers who are doing a great job. So we have put sort of dozens, if you will, of really bright researchers, help them get into this sort of research area fully. We also developed gel guard technology. This is, again, I mentioned our artificial stomach. This is more work in the artificial stomach, where we did sort of advanced targeted delivery technology. This was developing a system that protected the contents of an acidophilus supplement, but did it by taking advantage of the enzyme, the acid values of the stomach, and creating a technology that when the acid was present, it formed a gelatin barrier protecting the acidophilus from the harmful effects of that acid. But when it passed through into the stomach and reached the more alkaline pH of the primary region of the upper intestine or small intestine, where acidophilus needs to be delivered, it delivered them right there. Really very specific technology, targeted delivery technology. I don't know of anybody else that has developed a skill that we have on that. Maybe there's a pharmaceutical company somewhere that does, but I have not seen anybody in our industry with that capability. Interesting thing about our artificial stomach, by the way, that I didn't mention is that research tool has now worked its way into becoming a very serious quality control tool. So when you establish through the artificial stomach that your product behaves in a certain way, and that you fine-tune your formulation so your product always behaves that way, then you can go back when you make that product and you can confirm in the artificial stomach as a point of quality, relentless commitment to quality that we exhibit, that the product performs in the stomach as we would expect. We don't take anything for granted when it comes to our products. At the same time, in that decade, we also developed Phytoguard. I think this is a much overlooked product. It is a whole food antioxidant supplement for kids. It's a rich source of carotenoids and flavonoids and other important bioactive substances that children simply don't get enough of. And it's a very powerful product. So something for you who have kids to consider. Let's see, moving on to the, oops, what happened to my screen here? There we go. Moving on to decade 5. We developed this thing called glycemic response control technology. A big step for a couple of reasons. One is we didn't just develop this, excuse me, my eye is watering. We didn't just develop this by accident. We developed this because we had known for a long time, actually, from conversations I had with SAB member Dr. Fred Hooper years prior, that how the body manages sugar was going to be an important thing to understand if we were going to help people protect their health and maximize their potential for long-term health and vitality, lifelong health and vitality. Because the body's relationship with sugar is sort of a double-edged sword. It's one of those things that you absolutely need, but also if you get too much, it creates all sorts of problems. So as we began to look at that, we began to, through our investigations, look at what happens when the body consumes sugar. What events occur? What metabolic things occur? And how can we influence that? So we began to find out that if you manage a product formulation just right, you can actually manage how blood glucose enters the bloodstream. Instead of getting a great big spike, generally if you consume sugar or a high carbohydrate, simple carbohydrate meal or beverage, orange juice or whatever it might be, you get a big spike of glucose right afterwards. And in response to that spike, your body produces a big spike of insulin. And because your body is almost always overreacts, your elevated or hyperglycemia, too much blood glucose, becomes hypoglycemia, too little blood glucose, and you sort of oscillate back and forth. But we found that by understanding formulas and putting them together just right, we could actually manage the way glucose enters the bloodstream. And that became what we call glycemic response control technology, actually a technology that allows the ability to control how glucose enters the bloodstream and manage the peaks and valleys of hyper and hypoglycemia that so many people suffer from all the time. That's also a function of managing a person's risk of losing control of how they manage their blood glucose levels. Diabetes, pre-diabetes and diabetes are conditions and diseases where your body's ability to manage blood glucose for a couple of reasons becomes compromised. And we believe that though this is not a cure, especially not for type 1 diabetes or anything like that, it is something that people can use to manage their risk of going down the path towards pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes by understanding this and embracing this technology. So it not only provides stable glucose levels, but it also promotes long-term energy levels. That research was presented and published at meetings of the American College of Nutrition. This is where the American Dietetic Association people, all the dietitians in the US sort of go. And it was presented at that meeting and published in the Journal of the American College of Nutrition. At the same time, and that's about decade 5, we introduced Salmon Oil Plus, incredible product. I won't take you through the whole story, but it was when we investigated nature, we found that in salmon and things like that, Mother Nature provides 8 omega-3 fatty acids, not just 2 or 3, but 8. And because of our respect for Mother Nature, we began to look at what those were and what they are. Initially, they were hard to find and identify because no one really knew them. So we spent a lot of time pioneering that understanding. And later on, brought the first product of its kind to market that delivered all 8 of the omega-3 fatty acids that are naturally present in the food chain and things like salmon and the like, omega-3 rich fish. We were able to standardize those amounts. We used unique technology, what we call UHPO3, which is ultra-high potency omega-3 technology that, through a process called molecular differentiation, allows us to identify certain omega-3 fatty acid molecules and boost their potency and purity in the product. That is an amazing product that has gone on to do amazing things, including what we did in decade 6 here, where we did some clinical trials. For those of you who are new to NeoLife, you'll hear me talk a lot about clinical trials. We do a lot of clinical trials. It's not something that's required of us. It's something that we require of ourselves. It's something that we do because, you know, when we invite people into the NeoLife family and suggest that they use our products, that we do that understanding that that's a lifelong sort of commitment. So again, and I'll make a long story short, in this human clinical trial, we proved a number of things. We proved that Salmon Oil Plus was cardioprotective, meaning that it showed that it could lower triglycerides and improve the omega-3 index. That's the relationship between inflammatory omega-6s and anti-inflammatory omega-3 fats. That it lowered the inflammatory index. That is an index of risks of low-grade inflammation existing in your body, and what we call inflammation, promoting the accelerated aging of inflammation. And we also showed that it, in a second element of the trial, that it promoted the production of things in the body called resolvins, which, resolvins are bioactive substances that actually quench inflammation in the body, that calm that down. Now, inflammation is an important aspect of immune function, so you need it immediately, but you don't want it to linger, because wherever you have inflammation lingering, you have accelerated oxidative stress and accelerated aging. And whenever inflammation lingers, that tissue cannot be fully healed. So our ability to produce these, support the production of these resolvins, very, very important. Our initial clinical trial got published in the journal you see there, again, the Journal of the American College of Nutrition. And some of the work on resolvins got published in the scientific journal, Science and Translational Medicine. And later on went on to be cited in one of the premier medical journals in the world, the New England Journal of Medicine, where they cited our research, as a reason why people would be wise to take an omega-3 supplement every day. In that particular case, they were talking about for the preservation of eyesight, but in an overall inflammatory sense. The loss of eyesight is driven by inflammation in the eye. So they showed that this would be very important in quenching those sort of ocular inflammations and preserving eyesight. We know that it goes much beyond that into inflammation throughout the body. Anyway, unique thing. No one else in our industry can make that sort of claim. In decade 6, we developed the power of polyphenols. We had been working with Plant Polyphenol Human Research Interest Group for a long time, so we utilize that to bring NeoLife tea into the marketplace. NeoLife tea has powerful bioactive components of green, black, and white tea. These are called catechins. They are bioactive substances that are in a family of polyphenols. We standardize a particular one called EGCG, which is both thermogenic, meaning that it tends to increase the cell's ability or demand to burn energy, utilization of fat, and the stabilization of energy production. And we also delivered a group of adaptogenic herbs that work to promote alertness and mental clarity. Very, very powerful product. Also in decade 6, we developed our new NeoLife shakes. Long stories again. This comes from all the way back in 1960s when we developed our proteins. We were on a never-ending quest to do better products. So, and this is representing that sort of continuation of our work on proteins and protein supplementation. A tremendous product, very high protein content, 22 amino acids, of course, very high protein scores, very high protein efficiency in the body, complete amino acid supplementation, all of those amazing things. It reflects glycemic response control technology. A really powerful and unique product. I could do an hour on that itself. But again, we did clinical trials. That's something we'd like to do, not required, but something we'd like to do. And in this particular clinical trial, we showed that NeoLife Shake has the capacity to help people manage weight, lose weight, retain weight, whatever it might be. We showed that it had an ability to support body mass reduction or changing in your body mass index, meaning the relationship between your fat and lean tissue. So it showed that you can actually reduce your fat tissue while you maintain your lean tissue. And excuse me. And it was cardioprotective as well. So we could reduce LDL cholesterol, improve the relationship between LDL and HDL cholesterol, and reduce total cholesterol. Another powerful product with proven clinical evidence. Also in decade 7, we introduced Nutrients Organic. I'm not going to take you through this. This is a really, really well executed, totally organic approach to skincare. Really important, first in our industry to do this. Most of you probably know about this. If you don't, look it up online, but it is a great new product line. But for the sake of expediency, I'm going to move on. As you can see, there's a lot of scientific evidence behind NeoLife products, not only in general, but specifically about our products. And these things that you see here, all of these publications and more are publications where NeoLife products and the effects or the benefits they provide have been showcased or spoken of or referenced or cited. Really important difference. There's not another company in our industry that can produce this sort of heritage, that has this sort of acceptance, that has been so widely embraced by the scientific community. And the reason is because we do good science. We do great products, and once the scientific community got to know us, they were happy to participate with us. So in addition to getting all of these things published in these amazing peer-reviewed journals, we have been able to partner with some of the great institutions and research groups of the world as well. So I want to tell you about how we back this up with quality, because we have this quality without compromise approach. Quality is important. It's wonderful to throw things together, but if they're not quality, if they don't have that consistency of delivery every time somebody takes it, what's the point? Our goal is not to sell products. Our goal is to use the product to deliver a benefit in the person that's consuming it. So we look at quality in that regard. It's not just, is it still the same color when it gets to the consumer? Is it going to still provide that same benefit? So we have this thing called quality without compromise. Interesting thing about this, every single thing that goes into every NeoLife product, that's not only the ingredients, but the liner on the cap and the bottle itself, or whatever it might be, must first qualify to be in our products, right? Every NeoLife product, everything that goes into our products, they must meet these really strict quality requirements. This is every supplier of every ingredient must qualify to become part of our production system. And then every time they come into our facility, they have to requalify. Just because you did it once doesn't give you a free pass for the next time. Every time your product, whatever it might be, comes into our system, you have to requalify. That in itself is something that is not necessarily widely embraced throughout the industry, but it's a foundational thing to the way we do that. We rely on nature for sourcing a lot. So we do this thing called based in nature sourcing, where we carefully select whole food sources to produce the highest quality ingredients we can. We do this through very elaborate processes, okay? We don't just accept anybody's carrots or anybody's salmon. We have very strict relationships with the suppliers, the sources of these ingredients, because only through superior nutrients, superior source materials, do we know that we can deliver the superior nutrient content that we demand for our products. So we start with based in nature sourcing, and then we go to great lengths to make sure these things come from the right places. We know these raw materials have the sort of things that we need them to have and don't have the things that we need them not to have. So we develop quality standards. For example, I'll use tomatoes because it's on the picture here. The tomatoes we purchase are not just any old tomato, right? And they're not grown just any old place. They are a specific genetic identity of tomato. In other words, a specific kind of tomato that has a very specific gene sequence to it that is the seed stock of the tomatoes that are grown for us in these areas where we know the conditions of the soil and so on and so forth. And only then are they able to be accepted to meet that first criteria of acceptance of stringent quality control. And what goes on in those crops like that are taken care of all along the way. It's not just, we don't assume that everything's going well. We actually make sure everything is going well by checking things along the way. Very stringent quality control standards. As they arrive in our system, however, we revalidate those things. Do they have the nutrients we want? Are the things that we don't want not there, pesticides or whatever that might be? And do they have the right gene code? Are they genetically the right material? And the reason we do that is this is the way we make sure that genetically modified organisms don't get into our product line. We do that by making sure we understand the genetic identity of those things that are coming into our supplies. And then we test to reaffirm that that genetic identity is accurate. If they fail the gene test, it doesn't matter what's the rest in the product, that raw material or batch is eliminated. So very, very strict adherence to that sort of thing. Once those things pass that sort of stage one, gate one, if you will, in our multi-gate quality control system, they are released from the quarantine environment and move into extraction. We know that those tomatoes or carrots or whatever they might be, salmon, has specific nutrients that we want to focus on. So we go through a process of extraction and concentration. We're not trying to deliver spinach to you. We're trying to deliver the bioactive substance in spinach called lutein and zeaxanthin, two really important carotenoids. And we want to do that in a way that they're going to be nutritionally significant enough to have an impact on your health. So we go through these processes of extraction. We know all the raw materials, the raw fruits and vegetables or whatever that might be, meet those criteria. So we go through that extraction process. We use state-of-the-art extraction, finding, identifying the lutein and zeaxanthin in its spinach leaf is not an easy thing to do when you consider that it's only sort of like, 1% of 1% of 1%. So very sophisticated extraction technologies. And once that's done, however, we go through those extraction technologies and arrive at the next thing we do is put it right back into quarantine. And it goes through a re-verification and confirmation. We knew where those tomatoes came from. We knew that they had a certain amount of the actives we want, lycopene in the case of tomatoes, and we knew we were able to identify those, and we knew we were able to extract them. So now we need to make sure that they're actually present in this extract and the amount we want. So again, it goes into quarantine and goes through re-verification and confirmation. Only after that is it released to go into the manufacturing process, where these individual raw materials, the things that were in the carrots, tomatoes, spinach, red bell peppers, peaches, and strawberries, all those carotenoids or the flavonoids or the cruciferous compounds or the omega-3s or the garlic allium compounds or whatever the product is, that all of those things are brought together in state-of-the-art manufacturing equipment and made into the product. So that we can actually put them all together and deliver that product. This is state-of-the-art stuff. I could spend an hour talking about it, but suffice to say that it's amazingly high technology. And then after we make that product, guess what? It goes back into quality control. It goes into yet another gate where we confirm that everything that we had thought up to that point, the origin, the material itself, the nutrients it contained, the things that it didn't contain that we don't want in there, its genetic identity and its content and so on. All of those things came along and now are in this product. Well, we proved that to ourselves that they're there. So through leading edge testing and certification of finished products, sometimes even employing outside laboratories to double check our own data, we prove that the product meets our criteria. But it doesn't stop there. Very often we will retain samples and keep them for years and continue to do research on those samples to see if the quality, to assure that the quality is not only there at the time of manufacture, but durable, meaning that it has a long and effective shelf life. So a really important difference. Only then is it released to the consumer. And what we end up with is a quality control system that comes from the source all the way up to the consumption, to the person that's consuming it. And you can see that trail, we can see that trail through our batch tracking system. On the side of every bottle, like in this case, it's a carotenoid complex, there is a batch number. And if we enter that batch number into our control database, our quality control database, it opens up the whole story behind that batch that goes all the way down and looks at every ingredient at every place along the road, all the way back to where they came from and the nutrients they had and everything we collected about them going up to that point. And then everything, from its point of release into our supplies going forward. So it's a never-ending deal. It's a complex and really exciting quality control system you should all be proud and secure of. It is world-class quality, and I like to summarize it this way. Because of what we go to, our standards for quality often exceed those of all of the regulatory agencies that we encounter. So I like to say that NeoLife products meet or exceed the quality standards for purity, potency, and consistency of every major regulatory authority in the world. It's not like we just comply with some. It's not like we just meet the USDA or the US FDA or the Japanese Ministry of Health or whatever it might be, okay? South African Bureau of Standards, whatever it might be. Our quality control standards meet or exceed all of those. That sort of level of quality is something that we should all be very proud of. It's not an inexpensive thing to do, but when you look at what we're asking people to do to invest in their health for the rest of their life, we think it's an essential thing to do. So remember where we started about asking people what's important to them. If it's important that they are engaging with a company that has a long history of innovation and excellence, they come to the right place. That's NeoLife. If it's important that they have a powerful foundational philosophy, like based in nature, that sticks to that and understands what nature means and is able to differentiate between what's natural and what's maybe unnatural, like a GMO. And a commitment to science that goes on not just for one product, one time, or 1 year, but science that goes on year after year after year, being published in peer-reviewed journals and being generally accepted in the scientific community as fact, then NeoLife is the right place. If they're looking for unique and exclusive ingredients and technologies that are not just the run-of-the-mill stuff that you can buy everywhere, but proven ingredients that deliver benefits that you just can't get otherwise, then NeoLife is the right place. They're looking for a company with a relentless commitment to quality, a company that takes quality beyond the idea of just how your product looks as it exits your manufacturing facility, but focuses on exactly what's in your product, all the way from the source materials, all the way through to how it arrives at the customer and the benefits it provides to those customers. And NeoLife is the right place. And if you're looking for a company that has scientific proof that it works, not only from their own research, which we have a lot of, but from important third-party research organizations and institutions, researchers like those at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, as an example, then you've come to the right place. That sort of compelling evidence, not only produced by the company over decades, but also supported and promoted by others in the scientific community, makes our products truly stand out. So I am going to stop sharing here, Drew, and turn this thing back over to you. I probably went longer than I'd hoped, but hopefully I didn't bore anybody too much.
John, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. That is over 6 decades of history, innovation, and excellence packed into one webinar, and we so appreciate that. And a statement that you made that I just hang on to is, our goal is not to sell a product, but to deliver a benefit to the person who is taking that product. And right, along with the information that you've shared, just makes me realize that nobody does nutrition like NeoLife does nutrition. And to our distributors on this call, I just hope this information gives you the rock solid confidence and belief in your product line, not only to talk about and recommend these products to other people and other families, but the confidence and the motivation to make NeoLife nutrition a part of your family's daily routine. Because we all know what our mission is. Our mission is to make this world a healthier and a happier place. And that starts with you. It starts with your spouse. It starts with your children. And we use this incredible nutrition as our weapon of choice. And I know every one of us on this call, we all know families out there that are, they need to find a nutrition solution. They need to find a supplement that will do what they need it to do. And I believe we have the answers to their needs and the solution to their needs. So John, once again, thank you so much. We appreciate your time, and we just wish you a fantastic and blessed Wednesday, your time. And to every NeoLife distributor on the call, thank you for being with us. As always, it's wonderful connecting with you. This webinar will be recorded, and I'll get it out to you so that you can share it with your teams. Good night, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Okay. Thanks, Drew.